So, coming off of last week, the official ceremony where you got to meet the public and make some statements, I was struck by a couple things you said about the department, about your personal life and kind of what brought you to this point. First off, I want to give the opportunity just to brag about the Bakersfield Police Department and all that it does and all that it's meant to you.
Well, the Bakersfield Police Department is 500 men and women and volunteers that are here working day in and day out to keep the community safe and to provide a better place for our children to grow up and for the community to thrive. And I mean, we're just working hard to make people safe.
I was struck by watching that your speech there, and you called out your family, your grandkids, your wife. That's got to be a humbling thing to be where you're at now, to see where you've come from, and to have that support around you. Did that make a difference during that swearing in?
It made a huge difference. I pointed out that we had people from the business community, from every denomination of religion, but for my family to be there, and it's just huge. From my mom to my wife, my sister, and all the cousins and kids and grandkids is just awesome to see that. Coming from a kid from the southeast Bakersfield, used to run around at the Friendship House, to being the chief of police. I just never really saw that coming.
Yeah, you've done a lot within the department. You've been on the narcotics team, SWAT. You've been a sergeant, a lieutenant. You were assistant chief for so many years. What makes you qualified for this job? Some people may look at this as a rising in the ranks, and this is just the next step, but you mentioned where you've come from, your connection to this community. What makes you explicitly qualified to be chief of police?
Well, I think that it's humility and competency. I believe in the community. I know that I have shortcomings just like everybody else. Nobody's perfect, but the time that I've spent here in the last 28 years, I've worked every division in the department. I've sat on the California Police Chiefs board, subject matter expert in leadership development for the police officer standard and training. I'm actually going to be a subject matter expert for at the federal level for the JAG Burn Memorial Grant for the 2018 policy cycle. So, I think my education, experience, and background all coupled together make me a good fit for this position.
Chief Williamson was at that ceremony last week, and any words of wisdom he's imparted on you in his last 7 years in that role? Is there anything that can prepare you for this role, or is this just something that you learn as you go?
I think his words of wisdom to me would be to take a breath. In his leadership style, he was a little more slower paced than I, and sometimes, I'll run headlong in some things, and, I'll have to stop for a second. That's just a personality thing. But, he told me, hey, sometimes you got to take a breath and relax and think about things. I'm a pretty analytical guy, but I move forward pretty quickly. So that was his advice to me. We need to look at all of the things from a holistic approach, whether it's AB 109, rolling into Prop 47, rolling into Prop 57. Where's that going to go? Quality of life issues. So we talked about a myriad of things, but one thing I can say about Chief Williamson is he's a man of character. He's a man of commitment to this community, and it was a pleasure to work for him and watch him work.
You come into this role at a challenging time, both nationally with policing, locally. Just days before you're set to sworn in, we had an officer-involved shooting that drew some criticism on a national level and here at home. I wondered what was behind your decision to step out and lead that press conference, even though you hadn't been officially sworn in as chief of police. And how do you address issues like this going forward?
Well, I thought it was important for the public to see, what their next chief of police was going to be like and what they could expect from me. Because even though I am pretty connected in the community with all of my different organizations that I sit on and the boards, there are people who don't know who Lyle Martin is. And I thought that, it was a time that the public was asking questions, and B, they needed to see what I am and what I'm about and what they're going to have going forward. So I thought that it was important for the public to get the information. That was the number one thing. But the second thing was to see who I am and what I'm about.
Has anything changed since that press conference? Any new information on that case? It's, I believe today is, as we're doing this interview, is the day of the funeral for that family. Any new information on the case that people need to know about?
They're continuing to work. I reached out to the FBI to have them examine our investigation. A couple of their investigators were out 2 days ago and met with our investigators, and they actually went out, the FBI went out to the scene yesterday with our investigators. But as far as the entire investigation, I get the initial information and then I step away from it. I don't like things piecemealed to me. I think sometimes we'll tend to start to draw conclusions when we don't have all the information. So I step away from it, let the investigation and the process take place, and then wait for the recommendation in the entire case to be presented to me before I make a decision.
I'd be curious to get your thoughts on something. Obviously, you've been in policing for several decades now. You've worked in many roles. You've been on the streets. You've been in an administrative role. Does anything prepare you, now that you're leading 400 or so men and women in uniform, for that call, 998 over the radio, officer-involved shooting? What goes through your mind when you hear that? And does anything prepare you for that, in terms of how you mentor or help those officers through that time?
I think time and experience is the only thing that can prepare you for that. The first time that you hear that, it is, I mean, honestly, you kind of think, did I just hear what I thought that I heard? Because it doesn't happen that often, and that means that, you know, an officer needs assistance and that there's been an officer-involved shooting. For me, the perspective has changed. I mean, I was a SWAT team leader. I've been a homicide detective. I've always been that go-to guy, but now the command staff and the management staff know that when they call me in the middle of the night, the first thing they have to tell me is, your sons are not involved, because I have 2 sons now who are in law enforcement. Second thing they have to tell me is, are people okay? And then brief me. And that I never really thought about that until my first son started working here, and the first time I had a call in the middle of the night because I answered the phone as a father, not as the chief. And then I'm like, oh, you know, it's a different role for me. But I think that gives me a unique perspective that, you know, I have to be very analytical about everything and keep things in line and follow the process and the procedures and make sure everyone else is doing that as well.
And obviously this department's been through a lot in the last few years. With Officer David Nelson's tragic passing, one of the first officers to die in the line of duty with BPD in many years. Obviously that happened under Chief Williamson. Did he impart anything on you, any lessons he took away from that could help you if, God forbid, something like that ever happens again? Have you thought about that?
You know, he and I walked through that one side by side. So I got the call first, and that was one of the first times that I didn't want to call him. So when I called him, gave him the information, you know, we immediately came down here and we sat in his office and we talked about process and those types of things, because it hadn't happened in our careers. And, you know, I had to reach out to, at that time, Under Sheriff Rosemary Wall to get some perspective, you know, the good, the bad, and the ugly. What are the do's and the don'ts that they had learned? You know, unfortunately, they had been through that several times with deputies, because you don't want to misstep. You've got the public interest, you've got the Nelson's family interest, and we've got 500 men and women here who are grieving as well. So she was very integral in us deciding how we moved forward, how we approached the family, how we approached the organization and the public. And I tell you, you know, for a tough situation like that, I think this community, you know, wrapped its arms around us, and we are forever grateful for that.
I would imagine morale during that time was difficult. Morale in any department across America has to be challenged now with the modern day policing. You have Ferguson, Dallas, different situations across the country. How is morale here at Bakersfield Police Department, and is there room for improvement? And do you think your new position here is any way contributing to a new culture or improved morale?
You know, morale, you got to take the temperature of morale on a day-to-day basis now in the era of social media. I mean, the world is so much smaller, and we have to be cognizant of that at the management level. I've kind of checked the temperature, and people they're still excited about coming to work. They're excited about serving. We're in a unique position here in Kern County and Bakersfield. Again, this community embraces us, but they do hold us accountable when they think that we've done something wrong, or we've done something bad, or something needs to be taken care of, and they let us know, and we appreciate that as well. Right now I'm thinking about my staff, and I've got 4 different generations in my staff, whether, you know, your Xers, Yers, millennials, and, you know, everybody deals with things a little bit differently based on their upbringing. So the delivery mechanisms that we at the management level for keeping morale are going, the things that motivate me. You know, I was a guy that loved to come to work to live, and there's other people who live to go to work. So we have to look at those things and what motivates people, and keep our finger on the pulse and make sure that everyone's getting what they need from a management perspective.
Now, recruitment's been a huge thing here at the department. You guys are always looking for new officers. What do you tell a man, a woman watching this interview, considering joining the police department, considering wearing that uniform, given all the challenges with police work right now? What do you tell that individual?
I tell them there's nothing more rewarding than seeing a smile on a kid's face when you hand them a sticker, or, you know, helping a family through a tough time, or when you get that thank you card later where you've worked this, you know, lengthy investigation, it's come to resolution, and we kind of go about our business, and then a month, 2 months later, you get a thank you card from somebody. It's just unbelievable what it does for you internally, because we're here to serve. And if your heart's not in it to serve, you're in the wrong business if you're in police work. So anybody who's thinking about coming to work, if you think you want to serve your community and you want to go out and make a difference and help people in their time of need or crisis, come on down. We're always hiring, and those are the folks we're looking for.
And obviously, let's talk about the future of this department. You have a blank slate. You are now chief of police, and have an opportunity to rewrite your own history within this department, and to rewrite Bakersfield Police Department history. What does the future look like from where you sit, and what can people expect to see over the next 5, 10 years as you're the chief of police?
You can expect us to move forward full steam ahead. We're going to embrace the community. We want the community's input. The first thing we're going to work on is a strategic plan. So I'm going to put people to work. So I'm going to call on the community. We're going to have meetings, and we're going to do mind mapping, and we're going to put ideas together and set priorities. And this is their chance to tell us what they think, you know, we as a community need to do to become a better police department. But my ultimate goal is to have people stop thinking of 2 separate entities, the community and the police. The police are the community, and the community is the police. And that's my goal over my tenure, is for us to look at each other as one, not as 2 separate entities trying to work together. We should be one entity working together.
Bakersfield Police Chief Lyle Martin, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate your time, sir.